about the hybrid model, and having, you know, a teacher's input would be very beneficial, I feel.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Hi, everybody. Sorry about that little glitch. I think we have all the right folks in here. So it sounds like you already got started. I certainly don't need to hamper that. We do have a little bit of guidance. First of all, thank you all for volunteering. The session will be recorded, as you are aware. There's really not that many of us, but it may help to mute ourselves unless we're not talking, or unless we are talking. And my role as a facilitator is to support the discussion, be mindful of the time and focus of the topic, and to take some notes of your key points that I will share with the whole group later. And everybody on here knows me well enough to know it's hard for me not to be the person taking the grandstanding, constant talking area. So I'm really going to try to be quiet. If you have the sheet, and I can actually show it to you, we have 3 guiding questions. And the 3 guiding questions, we want to consider each of the 3 feasible models, and the in-person model, the remote instruction model, and then there's the hybrid combination model. So we can do this any way that's comfortable for you folks, identifying the greatest challenges in each of the models, but then maybe some examples of creative solutions for those challenges or other challenges, and then what might have to change. That's a big loaded question. Budgetary, institutional, or regulatory obstacles that could be in our way of implementing our creative solutions. So it sounded like you were started, and I do appreciate your patience while I was trying to get everybody in the proper room. I didn't foresee the use of different emails. And I don't know, I haven't made a CSV file in years, but I did. So why don't you guys go for it, and I'll take some notes.
Well, I think basically we started with just trying to define exactly what our goal is in terms of this team. I don't know, Sue, if you can address that.
Yeah, sure. So the purpose of today is purely to brainstorm. So this team is digital equity and access. The equity piece, Germantown is very, very fortunate to have a single device for every single child that comes to school here. And that, by the way, does include pre-K. When we were all sent home for the original pandemic closing, we at that time had shared devices for pre-K, but we used the grant, and they are also one-to-one. So that kind of access, having a device, we're good to go. The access of being able to use that device, that's a problem. So we have the equity, but not necessarily with the availability of the internet, either through a cell service or an internet service provider, because we are in rural New York State. We do have areas that don't have great service, and even cell service. So one reason why I invited Shannon to be on this team was because Shannon was our counseling team worked very hard on this issue from the moment just before school closed, trying to make sure every single child had not only a device, but a device and some way to get online, to download maybe previously recorded lessons. And she has more knowledge about that, which she, you might be interested in hearing. And since she's already navigated this on some scale, and we may be navigating it again, she may have some ideas. But that is primarily what we need to talk about. Ken and I had a preliminary conversation, and Ken had prepared some information for us regarding a model where, just to throw it out there, see, I knew I wasn't going to be able to be quiet. Just to throw it out there, if I'm a teacher in some grade and I have 20 kids, and I have 10 sitting in front of me and 10 that I'm live streaming to. We were tackling the problem of what if every room in this building was trying to live stream to 10 kids all at the same time? And yay, Devin's here. Because Devin is not only a graduate, we probably should have introduced ourselves, but he is also an engineer at our local internet service provider, GTEL. So Dan, do you know everybody? Maybe we should do that. That might
Yeah,
be.
that seems like a good idea.
Okay, so Lindsay, why don't you start?
Sure. I'm Lindsay Fink, and I'm a teacher. I teach reading for grades 3 through 6, and my son Jackson will be in pre-K next year.
Dan?
Dan Kalfush, I'm the current special education principal for Questar 3 BOCES for Casco Academy.
Shannon?
I'm Shannon Miller. I'm the school psychologist for the district. And like Sue said, I did in the spring work on making contact with all families that had digital access problems and work to try to solve that for them.
Devin?
I am Devin. I'm a network engineer at GTEL, and I also work pretty extensively with the Germantown Library.
Ken?
Hi, I'm Ken Twynham, IT manager for Questar 3 BOCES, and I assist Germantown with overseeing much of the technology initiatives that the district undertakes.
And Jim?
Jim Garvey, IT.
Okay, so.
Do you want me to, I could start if you want by just talking a little bit about what has happened so far in the spring that I'm familiar with. Okay, so one thing before we closed, teachers did try to informally survey their students and identify what families we knew from the get-go that maybe didn't have internet access. So it did seem like, especially in the middle, 7 through 12, they severely underreported that, probably because they felt self-conscious, although it was done through survey, but, or maybe they didn't even know for sure what we meant by that. A lot of students, I think, assumed because they had cell service, that would be sufficient. So in the first couple weeks, then we got information from all teachers about what students weren't participating or they hadn't been able to make contact with families. And then, so we made a spreadsheet of, we basically called them limited contact families. And then we made direct contact with all of those families and tried to get a sense of what their situation was. For some of those, it meant, finding out who their cell phone provider was and sharing information with them, because at that point, some of the providers were letting their cell phones be set up as, hotspots for free. So we had information on what companies were providing that or allowing that, and we were sharing that information for some families so that could at least solve the problem for temporarily. Then we tried to get a sense of what internet provider they would be appropriate given what their address was. And we assisted families who were interested. There were some families who didn't want to have access, and they made that choice, and it wasn't a matter of not being able to afford it, I guess, but that was just for a few families. So for those families who did want internet access, weren't able to get it any other way, we basically worked with 2 community providers, GTEL and Mid-Hudson Cable. They both were very generous in terms of providing a lowered rate for internet access. And we connected probably 6 or 7 families with Mid-Hudson Cable, and about 6 families also under GTEL. where we covered the connection fees and the internet service fees. And the PTSA, I think, started a fund for that. We haven't accessed that as of yet, but that's basically what happened in the spring. We did anticipate that as the financial situation got worse for families, that we would be having more families needing assistance than our original survey, which was, occurred towards the end of March. And so far that didn't, by the end of the school year, that didn't seem to be happening, but it's something we definitely anticipated. So I have all that information, the spreadsheet that was originally made, all the addresses, what their internet provider would be. All of that information is in a spreadsheet that we had created.
Sure, that was great information to capture, and it definitely gives us at least a little bit of idea of what it might be like if we're remote again.
Yeah, so at this point, I think with both GTEL and Mid-Hudson Cable, with them giving a discount on the rate, it's about $30 a month per family to cover the cost of internet connection, just to give everybody an idea.
I'm gonna have to there's a couple people that are kind of stuck out in, I don't know where, outer space. So if you folks want to if anybody wants to jump in, I'd love to hear from you, Lindsay, just to see, what was it like trying to teach remotely?
One other thing before Lindsay starts, I just want to make sure everybody knows is that we did get all the address and locations of the free hotspots that GTEL provides, and they were marked on a map, and that has been on our website. So that also is another solution to some of the access problems that we tried to get out there for people. Obviously, it's not that practical.
Hi, KKM Chatham. I'm sorry, I can't remember who you are. Okay, whoever KKM Chatham is, can you hear me?
I think that's an important point with our ideas, that we also have the framework of, we're dependent upon, in other words, to come up with our optimum solution.
I don't know what service you have with us. tried to look it up really quick. I didn't see anything, but if it's DSL copper service, it's more likely to fail than it is if it was a fiber service. So that's something else that in most of our areas, fiber is available, but in a very small percentage, it's still only DSL. So we're, if we connect anybody, it's preferred that they're on fiber just for consistency and speed.
Yeah, so like, throwing it back to like the platform itself, sometimes I kept my codes and my passwords for Zoom the same. Every week it was the exact same code and the exact same password and the exact same link, which I would always resend. And then kids that were consistently being able to get on sometimes weren't able to get on, and for whatever reason, or even like Darcy Caldwell, the 3rd grade teacher, would try to join my Zooms and she wouldn't be able to get on for whatever reason, even though I was staring at a screen with a bunch of kids. So there's always those glitches, I guess, for lack of better word, that kind of hinder learning in this kind of aspect.
Yeah, and I definitely saw that one problem with access also had to do with like user experience. So there were some families that just right off the bat were very comfortable with all of the platforms, and there were others that weren't at all, and that either stopped participating because of that or never really got up to speed. I know the teachers worked really hard to give as much tech support as they could, as did Jim and Clarissa. But that's a lot. That's a lot of people to try to get up to speed in a short amount of time.
We also found that there were a lot of our older students, and I'm talking older elementary because, like I said, I work with 5th and 6th grade, that were watching or in charge of their younger siblings. So we would have Zoom calls with 6th graders where there'd be a kindergartner on her shoulder, or there'd be 3 siblings in the back, or I would even have Zoom calls where a parent would be over here, another kid would be over here, and they would be on a Zoom call here. So there was a lot of technology happening at once, which was a hurdle for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the
I know. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I felt like I was really negative in that, but there were definitely positives. We got to know our kids better than ever. I know my students' parents now, because I was literally teaching in front of the parents a lot of the times. And I think we all have a connection now. And I know that wraps over to social, emotional and whatnot, but there's definitely a deeper connection between myself and my families now than ever. So that's a positive, and there were a couple others, but I felt like I was really negative and I didn't mean to be. I just wanted to.
Yeah, I think another issue that you brought up, Lindsay, is even just for these families, once you solve the device problem, the internet access problem, the user comfort level issue, the fourth can be just having a space inside their house that's appropriate to learn in. But I totally agree with what you said. There were some positive things. Like I did counseling over Zoom, and I had a couple of groups with young kids, and there were some 4th grade boys that I met with each week. And at one point they said, oh, this has been so hard and we never get to see each other and I really miss you so much. But in some ways I feel like I know you more than ever because they've seen their pets, they've seen their bedrooms, they've taken them on house tours, they took them, they saw their fort in their backyard. And so, yeah, that was something really, really positive about it in terms of a connection.
I also watched my niece lives with us at my house. So she's in 8th grade this year. So we were kind of watching her and helping her out with, the technology stuff. And I'm guessing it's a little different for every grade and every class, but it's most of the stuff she was fine with. Everything went fine with, the Zoom calls and Teams meetings and everything like that. But she had some trouble with a few things that we ended up like logging her account into one of our computers so she could use a full computer with a mouse and keyboard, rather than one of the thing that pops into my mind is a PowerPoint that she was trying to put photos into, and the touch screen on the tablet was just like making them all like too big, and it was too small, and then it was like they were backward, and we were getting really really frustrated with it. And I'm a technology person, so if I'm getting frustrated with it, I could see other people being frustrated with it. I mean, I don't know how that's something that could be fixed, but for us at least, 50% of her work was probably on her iPad. The other 50% was on one of our desktop computers or a laptop that we gave her.
Yeah, there definitely were some platforms that, didn't work 100% or, on an iPad, because I primarily use an iPad also for my work stuff.
Yeah, and definitely there's stuff that works better on an iPad too. So
Yeah.
you've got that, 50-50 thing, and that's a tough thing to figure out.
Do you mind just quickly speaking to which of those, applications or whatnot don't play so nicely on an iPad, if you recall?
So the ones that I remember her having trouble with the most was like Word documents, PowerPoints. Printing was a disaster. We had to print some stuff, some PDFs. And I don't know, I doubt it was my printer, because every other device in our house printed correctly, but it would always print like this double image for the first time, and then we'd have to print it again and then again until it cleared up. And but if we tried the same PDF from one of our Windows computers, it printed perfectly fine every time. And one thing, this was specific to her chorus class, but they used NoteFlight there for some of the singing assignments. The recording wouldn't work at all on the iPad. I don't know if it was a permissions issue or something, that it wasn't able to access the microphone, but we had to log her into that on our computers to be able to complete those assignments. So it wasn't everything. It was just kind of these, onesie, twosie little issues that I could see being frustrating.
Yeah, I asked because I'm hoping to just identify problematic apps where we may be able to go in a different direction or recommend, hey, maybe this isn't the best approach for what you're trying to do with your curriculum. We may need to look at something else that is actually working properly, and we don't want to frustrate the families as much as possible. So
yeah, I think some of it might have been maybe PowerPoint wasn't the best way to complete this task. Like, it was, a lot of them were worksheets that were put into PowerPoint, and she was expected to fill in a text box or something that was on top of the picture, and she kept moving the picture around of the document that she was trying to fill in. So I don't even know what the best option would be for something like that. I mean, I know there's PDF forms, and I don't know what Teams has, and if that has any better options, but that was really what was problematic for us in PowerPoint, at least.
Yeah, I think we found when we went to like Teams, we did Teams. We didn't initially start Teams in the 5th and 6th, but we drifted that way as we navigated this, and we found that Teams was working a lot better than something outside like Edmodo, just for sheer turn-in factor, to be able to turn in and track those assignments. I don't know about like forms, like a Google Doc type thing, but they were able to just insert like a Word document and stuff, and they didn't have to worry about editing, because I don't think we have ability to access or to edit PDFs on our work devices. So I'm assuming they don't have access to edit PDFs as well. Because I know sometimes you can type into a PDF, but so maybe getting that ability, I don't know.
And I think you're right about the Teams thing, at least. Abby was, as soon as Teams started becoming the primary thing, things got easier. And because Teams was the spot she was going to. It got a little weird when she was going to email for some stuff, Teams for other things, Zoom for certain things. So it was just a single platform would be awesome to have, everybody using the same thing.
We didn't love the video chat capabilities in Teams. I know that they've been promoting it. I've seen it on TV, even commercials where it says about you know, they're going to make it more Zoom-like where you could see them, but you could only see like a few people at a time. So if I had a class
Yeah.
with that, and you couldn't scroll, so I'd be kind of confused, and I'd be like, oh, Shannon, what did you say? Or can you show us again? You know, but
well, and people can join and you don't see who it is. Yeah, there's some things with the video chat with Teams that I didn't love either. So for counseling, I preferred Zoom for that as opposed to the Teams. But yeah.
And I
And I
think
know-
if that's the option, that would be fine too. Just for us, it would be nice to know the conferences are Zoom, assignments are Teams. You know?
Yeah, but you're
And
right also about the PDF. I know that in the high school, there were a lot of kids that struggled with that, and many of them would end up just printing it out if they could, writing in their answers, taking a picture and sending it back in that way, because it was easier than
pajama bottoms. Right.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hi. So I jumped in. I got a text from Dina. You guys, you feel like you're done?
Yes.
Okay, so you solved all the problems in the world. I can't wait to hear this. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. And you talked about food for the 3 different scenarios, the
Yeah.
in-school, the hybrid model where some of the kids are home. Did you come up with plans on how to feed the ones that are home when they're not here? And or did you at least identify the challenges with that?
We did have discussion on all of that. Yes.
Great. Okay. Well, I think the other folks are really on a roll. So I was planning on bringing everybody back. It's like a half an hour away, though. Is that right? Yeah. 12:55. So we went out at 11:55. So hopefully you'll stay with us, but certainly if you want to take a break and come back in, you can rejoin if you want to get off, you could actually go out now and then you could just rejoin like you did originally. And when we go back in the big group, I'll see you in the waiting room for the debrief portion. You might want to take a moment even and go into the New York State Ed. So it's nysed.gov. And the homepage says the task force recordings. You have to click on several places, like you have to go into the task force. Then it has the 4 regions, but only region 1 and region 2 have a video. And you can go in and look at the other transportation and operations. You can look at any one of those breakout sessions. It's fascinating what people around the state are saying. So if you want to do that, but at 11:55, I'm going to close all the break rooms, bring everybody back in. If you guys aren't there, I'll carefully watch the waiting room to see if you've re-entered. How's that sound?
Good. Very good.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, super. See you later.
Okay.
As the Apple products, there is Apple Classroom, so a teacher can see the students that are in their classroom at a specific time period. So if let's see, I got English first period between 8:04 and 8:45. So English 9, Miss Hilton should be able to see who's in that classroom at those periods. So even if we have to go to a off-premise or hybrid solution, the iPads are still going to show to, Hilton's going to be to 8:45, then it's going to go to Cats, and it's going to follow those students with the teachers. And that's happened this year, but I didn't notice it until late in the year. But that's one thing. So you will be able to see what your students are doing. And you can block them from what they're doing and point them in the direction. That's all built into the Apple part. And we're gonna have to do training and stuff on that, because I learned it 7 years ago and it's all changed.
So yeah, I think the scheduling thing is great, especially for like the high school. It makes sense. It's normal. It flows back and forth. I think for the elementary, it gets a little tougher because, like I said, the name of the game for the interventionists was don't overwhelm, but still provide. And so it became a really tricky thin line to walk. So I don't know if scheduling, I know that maybe this deviates again, but scheduling of students for services could be set from above to sort of limit some of these overlaps and overwhelming. And I if we go to the full digital model next year, it would obviously be a different expectation than what we were doing during, what I like to call crisis school. Crisis school wasn't homeschool and it wasn't necessarily distance learning. We were crisis schooling. And I think if we move to distance learning, it's got to look a lot different. And then again, with the hybrid model, looking a lot different and taking into account those different grade levels. High school, middle school, 5th, 6th, even, and then 3rd. And then I think of like my own son in pre-K. What does that look like? So.
So I just want to apologize for going in and out. I'm getting a cell phone. We have one group that's done. We're just past halfway mark on the hour. I don't know, Dan, I don't know, maybe you were already talking a little bit about it, but I was wondering, what it looked like over at your school. Did you get a chance to share about that at all?
No, we were talking more about software and the platforms and how it makes it easier for the families and the kids. And it sounds like from like what Shannon said, you guys did the similar things that we did. We sent out a survey. You had all the staff call. You got to target your areas to find out who doesn't have devices, who needs internet, etc. And then you work on a plan down there. So you're not dealing with the whole school. You're dealing with targeted pieces of it, and you can work your way down from there. And like you said, a lot of the issue is going to become like the parents are going to go back to work, and with the littler kids, they were home with them and it assisted and they could get on, and now you're going to be like, where's that kid? So now are we training daycares on how to sign into Zoom meetings? Because that's where the kids are going to be if we can't get them into school. I think the other question, the overarching question is, what is the streaming capability of the Germantown school building? Like, can the staff be in there 5 days a week and you rotate the kids and they can stream all those days from their classroom? And that's got to be answered for the equity, because, you can't have some people working from home and some people working from work. And so I'm just going to be frank, still get the same paycheck. Like, come on. So what's that look like? What's the testing on that from whoever is providing it? I don't have those answers, but so then you can develop a plan to be like, no, we only can have half the staff on the building or 2/3, whatever, because you can't say we're going to stream to everyone and everyone comes in and then the whole thing crashes. And then that's going to dictate. I really, unless there's some type of like national emergency, I can't see it being totally remote, because it's just too detrimental to the kids, especially the little kids. So what does that hybrid look like that's equitable for the parent? Like Jen and I were talking about, she's seen 10-4 models. I've seen like Tuesday, Thursday in, Monday, Wednesday, Friday off, but Wednesdays are office, and then you have like online classes around the weekend. Like, they're all different, everybody's trying to make it up right now. So I don't know, that's a whole different conversation with the teachers union and what's equitable and that kind of stuff. So
Maybe unpopular. I would love to be back. Like, I want to teach from my classroom. I want to collaborate with my, adult colleagues if I can. I made the space in my room, in my house, so that, I tried, but I want to be back in my classroom and I want to be back in the building, and if we can safely. So I think you bring up a good point that it is important that we're there and as safely as we can be.
So maybe one alternative to streaming, let's say it's a hybrid model stream or even all remote, everybody's streaming at the same time from the building. It might have to be something where when you're learning remotely, you're one day off because you would just videotape the lesson instead of live streaming it, just so there'd be less of a load on the bandwidth.
Yeah, and I don't know is it possible to have things, like I'm just thinking, I facilitate some different things in groups on Facebook, not for teaching, but like we can schedule it. Is there a way to like video, if I was teaching like a lesson on verbs, I could video it and then it could be uploaded sometime overnight, almost like a scheduled post type thing, because then we could spread out the load of the internet.
So that's actually something that we've also been talking about. The idea that everybody can live stream at once, that's probably not going to happen. But having scheduled, so if there are lessons that can be pre-recorded, it actually also speaks to the access issue. So, in a perfect world, although imperfect because I don't have internet in my home, we did get a grant and we have expanded our outside of the building access. So folks could imagine a parent who could come here, their child logs in, downloads all these lessons and goes home and over the next day or two plays the lessons. So I think coming up with some kind of like jigsaw puzzle of all those things might be what our hybrid model might have to look like.
Yeah,
But also too, looking at best practices for distance learning. And like you said before, it's not remote, it's distance learning now. So like, what does the University of Phoenix do? Or the, what is that, Southern New Hampshire? They do all the, like, what are their instructional practices that, I mean, they're college kids, but what can you use or take? Like you're talking about making videos and upload, what platform are they using? What's the best instructional practices to get the best out of the learners versus, we're just logging in and having a fun Zoom meeting for 15, I know what was going on in June, but.
Yeah, I mean, that model with University of Phoenix has been around what, like 20 years probably. So, that's a good idea.
Hudson Valley does a lot of them too. They're huge distance learning stuff right in the high schools too. They'll do the COSER and stuff where like if you have not anatomy or physiology, you don't have enough kids, you can put a kid in there.
So I know a lot of the online college coursework that I've taken has been through Blackboard, and which to me seems like a more advanced version of Teams. I think we could make Teams work for us the way that they make, say, Blackboard work for a college student. I could see our elementary kids and many of our elementary parents struggling with the formatting of Blackboard. Because even as a college student, there were times where I was like, wait, where was that assignment? But I think that's a great idea to look into those different things, because now you can take any, almost any college course online through Open SUNY. So.
Yeah, I've taken a few online college courses too through the Sakai platform. It's similar to Blackboard, but it's it's much more complicated than the Zoom or the Teams platform is, and that seemed a lot simpler. Probably limited in its functionality, but that might not be a bad thing.
Did anybody bring up, I heard a lot of talk about, some parents, and I know our IT team was amazing and gave out the phone number and they were helping parents, but did anybody mention anything about like professional development for parents? I mean, we wouldn't call it that, but did you guys mention that? And again, I apologize, I had to go in and out.
I think we said that when we talked about like finding a consistency of platforms, and I know that You said Clever and Apple Classroom, or, you know, talked about Teams or whatever the platform is, to provide training for everybody involved, including the on that platform.
I mean, even like a quick, quick guide on how, a 1-page, 2-pager guide, and maybe a little video on how it's, used is probably all they, really need. But, at least for most.
So you said Clever, Apple Platform, Teams. So that sounds like we're kind of focusing toward those items. I know high school had a lot of success with Teams. I heard a lot of positive things, but I'm sure the teaching and learning is really focused on what it was good for and maybe hopefully identifying what it wasn't good for. But I do think, platform and consistency seem to be kind of yelling to me about what we need.
And I think Dan brought up a good point where the caregiver might really change over the course of the year. It might start out being the family. It might turn into being a babysitter, a grandparent, a neighbor, who knows what. I mean, so having some kind of recorded training would be really important. We can't really just say, oh, the week before school started, all the parents were trained on how to use Teams and then Modo or whatever it was that specific teacher was using, or what our main platforms are going to be. And then, a month into it, oh, now it's not the parents, now it's grandma doing it. So having some kind of recorded training seems really essential.
Yeah, that makes a lot.
I know some teachers did a really nice job of just making like a 1-page cheat sheet for their parents that had like the sign in, the passwords, and just, the very basics, but all in a really user-friendly format. And I heard from many parents that was really invaluable.
Yeah.
The nice thing we have, it's the same device from kindergarten till they graduate. It's an iPad. So they're going to get more familiar with it as they get older.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, true. We're really very fortunate that way.
And Dan, to speak about your, the Zoom thing, we did find that smaller group Zooms worked better. Anything that could be smaller groupings. So I know that may come into play when it comes to, say, scheduling distance learning or a blended model or anything. Anytime we could provide smaller group instruction, it helped. If the kids didn't have to scan through, if it was one screen on the iPad, if there weren't 12 people trying to talk at the same time, it helps. So,
you just made me think of something too, Lindsay. In the hybrid model, if you're a teacher with 20 students and you have 10, and maybe your room is not big enough for all 10 due to the health and safety team and the CDC and the New York State guidance that are, happening at the time. If, being able to have maybe 5 in your room, Lindsay, and 5 in another room, but be able to include them in the conversation. It may not always be that they're so remote. They might be very close, but yet remote. So I don't know if that was brought up.
Yeah, I think we're really lucky being in our school district. I've said that 100 million times, working and living here, that we are in such a small group and that we can work really collaboratively. And I hope as an interventionist that I can be used very, if it's non-traditional, it's non-traditional. Like, I hope that, I can provide that extra space and that extra instruction. And so working really hand in hand with the teachers to provide, say, if it's like their reading instruction, and like you had said, Sue, 10 kids are in, Darcy's room and 10 kids are in Mary's room, and I have 7 in my room, and we're all providing instruction, but we're also meeting the needs of the specific students. So it could really be a win-win situation.
I have also thought about that, especially with 7 through 12. If we're really trying to limit their movement in the building, I'm sure everybody else has too, imagined a room where all the kids stay in there and they might all be remote learning different classes at the same time. Just,
That's a great point. That is a really great point. I hadn't thought of that, but that could absolutely happen once we get some kind of logistical guidelines. But sure, so they're all in English together. The English teacher comes in, teaches English, but second period, 5 kids are in home and careers and 5 are in PE and 5 are in something else, but they're supposed to remain in that space. So that's a great point. So it sounds a lot like headphones.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah. Or just, yeah, like have a home room and, they could all be participating in different classes at the same time.
Yeah.
It would cut down on the movement throughout the building for sure. I hate the idea though,
Yeah.
of kids being stuck in one place for longer than a class period.
That sounds like the Apple Classroom would come in handy to do that.
Mhm.
It automatically switches on the period.
Mm.
That does sound very cool.
Well, and if the teacher is still there to switch, if the teacher can switch, and I know that I know there's guidelines where do you cross contaminate, with the teacher, but we could try to figure out how to set up the classrooms in a way that we've maintained that significant distance. And, I come in to that mini cohort, even in the younger grades, and facilitate that reading instruction. And then Sarah Beth, who teaches math, might come in and facilitate the math instruction with that mini cohort. The only problem with that, with best practices, are then we're basically tracking children, right?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, but that's a great point. In the high school, though, it's different because you could be, all sophomores taking 10th grade English, but your third period, you might be in 4 or 5 different classes, including electives.
Mm-hmm.
And before, what I was saying is, it could also be the number of students in the building. A teacher could have students in more than one class. So we might be using some sort of technology to have maybe a TA in one room or even a general aide in one room with students for supervision, but the teacher teaching in both rooms. And we definitely have the tech to do that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's lots of options.
I assume in that model, it's possible that the bandwidth might still be a concern if there's that many people taking in content and distributing content at the same time. I don't know if we've ever broken out of that 200 meg limit on the network, but I know you're still set up for a gig down there from us.
Yeah, I would agree, and we should probably try and avoid doing Zoom or any kind of video sessions down to the individual student level while on site, because the network definitely can't support hundreds of students all basically streaming video at the same exact time. Sue had me crunch some numbers for if we had done basically each classroom doing a Zoom call with half of the class being remote, and that seems feasible, but at that point you only have really one device per classroom that is going to be consuming that internet bandwidth. If you start multiplying that out by however many kids that are in the classroom, then that's probably not realistic. It's just going to overwhelm the wireless access points. The internet is going to just completely bog down, and no one's probably going to be able to do anything.
I guess then you'd maybe have to go back to using recorded lessons more.
Well, you could.
That's certainly viable. I know the flipped classroom learning, which Tech Valley and a number of other places use extensively. That could certainly be a good approach. But I know in that model, you have to be able to make yourself available to go over that content, to answer any questions and whatnot, which still probably poses similar concerns about bandwidth and so on and so forth.
I think it would really rely on if the teacher could switch around. So like if you're providing that flipped classroom and say I'm providing that lesson and then, you know, I'm in the classroom where then I can facilitate the learning. Am I then able to go to the next classroom and help facilitate the learning after they've already watched the video, or does that defeat the whole purpose of it?
Yeah. Or if they're off site. So, but I think, you know, I think what I want to make sure I'm understanding what Ken said. So if I'm the teacher and I have 10 students in front of me and I have 10 on Zoom and only my device has those 10, not the other kids, I could be in fact providing instruction that is being captured, like me standing here waving my hands around right now and talking to those 10 kiddos offsite while the other 10 are watching me as well. So that is a model that I think has some potential. And fortunately, our classes are very small. We're very, very lucky there. So we're talking most classes are 20 or less.
So who decides who comes to school and who doesn't?
That's a great question. I've seen.
That's that equity.
Yep. That is, I see a lot of things in other states about opting out, opting in for all kinds of things, transportation. Like if I'm a mom and I'm home and I can stay home and maybe I don't want my kids going to the school. I think gathering that kind of information is pretty important. If that were part of our plan. I mean, it's just an idea. I'm sorry about all my noises.
I just think it comes into play with, you know, I'm thinking of the kids that had the, you know, that we provided access for, we provided training for and still didn't participate. And again, I'm trying not to look at crisis schooling as the same as distance learning, but what would happen if I was a mom and I said, well, no, my kid is going to stay home, he's going to go to Zoom. And then what happens if he's never on Zoom and he never participates, you know? So does that then get taken into account the way we would take in absences, excessive absences? And then also if those 10 on Zoom are always on Zoom, you know, again, with the facilitating the learning, they've gotten the lesson. When do they get the feedback? When and how would they get the feedback? Or would they come in on a separate day? And then that's when I'm providing that feedback.
That might be the way it goes. I know regulatory wise, there's a lot of pressure on the state to eliminate all state assessments. That does actually impact technology because of all the questions that go with it, and try to just really focus on teaching and learning and not have that. Attendance is a similar topic being talked, regulatory topic. There's a lot of talking about eliminating attendance issues, you know, hours of instruction, number of school days. That's the kind of guidance that the state, I think, is really focusing on. And it's very difficult to brainstorm without those guidelines because we have no idea what they're going to be. So we talked, I'm thinking mostly about remote and hybrid. Very little about in person, but I would say our topic really lends itself to that. Is there anything in person that you think digital access and equity really would affect?
I think absolutely it would affect for, you know, anticipating that there will be students and staff who are out due to illness or due to being in a vulnerable subgroup. So that, I guess that's where the opt-in, that opt-out might come in.
I also think maybe to piggyback on that, Shannon, having a method for students to bring iPads home, because I know one of the perks that the teachers we've said is when we were when we were creating some of these digital lessons, we were like, wow, we can use this next year. Like say we have a kid that goes on vacation, like we could provide this lesson and now they're getting that instruction from us. You know, it's not just a worksheet that we threw together. And so maybe if we're in school providing a way that kids either bring their devices back and forth like they do in the high school, or having some sort of pickup. So if a student is sick or in a vulnerable subgroup, they're still getting the access.
Mhm.
That's great.
And I think
Yeah,
even if you go back to a fully, in-person model, it's probably a good idea to maintain some of these digital aspects in case it does have to go back to a fully remote. Because I know this year on my end it was it was a tough transition, and I'm guessing it was for everyone else. But so it's probably good to maintain the the whole idea.
Yeah, I would agree. With the governor's orders, basically overnight to shut down and go working from home or working remotely. You have to be prepared for that at any given time. So you need to be sending the students home with their device, because they're not really going to have the opportunity the next day to go pick it up. You have to be prepared in advance, and really, anything can change on the dime at this point, I would presume. So being prepared, sending them home. Luckily, we are, one-to-one with all the devices within the students in the district. That's a huge benefit right there. So just, plan on having the students take them home every day. And then if anything does change, they're at least prepared, and you're not scrambling to try and redistribute the devices back out to the students, which is a pretty significant undertaking in and of itself.
Just because I feel like this is probably the easiest of our tasks, is if they did take them home every day, what is our cleaning procedure? How are we sanitizing? And I know that's the other groups or whatever, but just to piggyback on them, what is our sanitizing of devices?
Mhm. Great point.
It is the concern for other students, potentially touching those devices. If you're one-to-one and, basically the guidelines are you can't be swapping them around or anything, you hold on to yours, don't be touching other people's. At least then I think the risk of, passing along, any sort of, certainly COVID or any other illnesses in those means may be minimized.
Maybe probably the highest likelihood would be there be a sibling, a parent, or a caregiver who uses it or shows the child how to do something on it and touches it at that point. Of course, if they're in that student's group, then those are germs we'd be exposed to eventually anyway.
And everything else the student owns could come with the same. So it could be the backpack,
Absolutely.
shoes, and the clothing and the coat. So, but that does come to mind. I mean, we have a whole list of rules for folks who are using district technology devices, and we never said before no one else could touch it, but when in school. But that's going to be, that huge group of health and safety and protocols and the teaching of the youngest children. And there's a big push for using children as teachers for children, because we all know they listen to them more than they listen to us about all those protocols, and how much instructional time is going to be used just for teaching safety protocols, health and safety protocols. And that will be a substantial amount of time the younger they get.
Yeah.
One really interesting tool that I saw just a couple weeks ago was it's basically a charging cart, a device charging cart that had integrated UV lights in it, that basically when you plug it in and you close the door, it turns on these UV lights for whatever the period is, 5 minutes or 10 minutes, that basically sterilizes those devices. I don't know how well something like that would work if students are keeping them with them all the time. Do you just put it in temporarily to sterilize them and then you take them out? I'm sure there's probably risk of whoever's handling all the devices at that point in time, but I thought it was pretty unique differentiator from other just normal charging carts that the district already has. So
I've just seen
go ahead. I'm sorry.
I've just seen how things come back from home, you know, including my own, and so no judgment, but and cleaning of some sort, because you know, as a teacher, I'm gonna have to go over if they're having troubles when they're in school with their devices, I'm gonna have to facilitate the assistance with that. And yeah, I can wash my hands and, you know, not touch my face, but it might not be a bad idea to just have that extra step if we can.
Yeah.
Something like that cart might really come in handy if we're having kids take their devices home every night. You know, there'll be a certain percentage of them that will forget to bring them the next day.
Yeah.
So having a lending cart, being able to disinfect those, you know, that would really be helpful.
They've been selling on the shopping channels little handheld devices for your phones. They also sell a wand, which is the same type of light. You can rub over the thing.
Wow.
So they do make those portable, and they also make one that'll do the room for overnight.
Yeah, in hospitals, they've been using basically robotic UV sterilization machines that, you know, they'll basically scan the entire room over the course of, you know, half an hour or an hour, and then they'll, you know, pick it up and carry it to the next room and do that. I know those are extremely expensive. They're probably in really high demand at this point too, so I don't know that we would be able to even get anything remotely to that degree. But some sort of, you know, maybe cabinet or whatnot may be, you know, realistic. I don't know if there's, you know, maybe grants or funds available for something like that, but it might be worth investigating. The handheld wand ones, I mean, that if you're doing, you know, hundreds of devices, that could be a real, you know, chore. You got to be thorough about it. You know, just by doing a little bit of research, you got to have at least like a couple minute exposure for most of these of, you know, kind of consumer level that aren't, you know, super high intensity. Those are probably the much more expensive ones, but you got to have that exposure time to really do a thorough, you know, disinfecting of the device. And if someone's manually, you know, doing that wand, I doubt it'll really be of any benefit going with that approach.
So
yeah, they're talking at least 30 minutes to 45 minutes. Do any good with the light?
so it's actually time to wrap up. Did anybody have anything else they wanted to share before we head back?
As I was just kind of trying to absorb all the different things we've talked about, I mean, one thing I guess that's sticking in my mind is that we've identified some of the downsides to instructing primarily through live streaming, and that includes access on the family side for those families of ours that have limited resources, because you have to have internet availability, you know, throughout the day or at a very specific time when that lesson is occurring live. But there's also the downside for us in terms of our digital capabilities in getting things out there live.
So
Right.
pre-recorded is going to have to play a big part.
Yeah, I mean, on the, you know, obviously a live stream, you feel like you have a much better connection. You can ask questions in real time. You have the teacher responding in real time. There's obviously more of a personal connection that's so important. So, you know, again, some mixture of the two, you know, but anyway, it's just one thing that is starting to kind of gel in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, almost like the primary lesson is pre-recorded, but then like office hours or something. Maybe not necessarily that, but something like
in
that.
small groups, some kind of
Right.
small group study
Yeah.
group or office hours. I like that idea. Some kind of personal connection that you're having in a smaller group to answer questions, go over the work. That could be in person, or if we're completely remote, not.
Yeah, and it could be a combination, depending upon the situation the family has.
Yeah.
I think whatever we decide to do, we should do some sort of run through, like physically, if we're physically in the school, like I know a bunch of us had said the capabilities and whatever the schedule is like, have, the teachers come in and we actually try to log on to everything we need to get for our class, just to make sure.
So Dan just shared a website for everybody. Thank you, Dan. It's in the chat. So if you want to grab that quick, then if everybody's okay, we're going to head back and see how everybody made out. And I'm getting hungry.
Real quick, just
Yeah.
one quick note. If we are looking towards the hybrid approach in any capacity where we are doing some sort of live streaming, we really need to give consideration to what that looks like in terms of the devices that we're using to transmit the Zoom call, and how that relates to the orientation of the teacher. Are we talking to classroom of students while having off to the side a device that we're having to switch to, just what that actually looks like. And Lindsay, you make a great point. Go through that actual, test that out, what that looks like in the classroom to help identify, okay, are we having microphone issues? I'm talking this direction and the microphone's trying to pick me up over here and the students can't hear a word that I'm saying. Are we trying to, show content, but also monitor the remote students at the same time? What does that look like? So just working through that whole process and getting a good sense of really what it looks like, I think is going to be key to successfully pulling it off.
Yeah. Well, and teachers multitask so much and they're always moving around. So it's not like they're, especially in elementary years, it's not like they're just standing at the front of the class, while they're teaching. They're all over the place.
Right. But if you're anchored to a device to teach remotely, that could be extremely problematic.
Yeah.